wild update officially released this last week, including Allays which were not farmable or breedable in any way. This caused all sorts of issues, and it seems like a big oversight. This is something Mojang are actually going to be fixing in the first bug fix update, which will be coming out in a few weeks. 1.19.1 or 1.19.10 will add the ability to duplicate Allays using amethyst shards. This is really interesting, and if you're curious as to why they chose those, we fortunately do have the direct response from Alexander Oostman, one of the developers who worked on this, and he said, seen some questions as to why we landed on amethyst shards as the item for Allay duplication. They have a musical sound to them, which goes well with the Allays. They are renewable, something we really wanted, and the magical feeling of them resonates well with the Allays. And this makes sense because Allays do love music, and you know what? Amethyst makes the lovely jingly jangly noises that is basically music to my ears, and the reason I wanted to bring this up is because he also says this is adding extra value to the geodes, which felt proper as well. I really like this. I like this trend of 1.19. One of the big upsides of this update is they're really going into previous features that kind of felt underused, and they're giving them more of a purpose. The goat is near meaningless without the goat horn. The dripstone got a lot more useful because of its renewability for clay, and I really like that the amethyst is getting a little bit of a buff as well. So that is some really positive news, and there is going to be a bug fix update because after every major version release, Mojang tries to release a bug fix update to address the biggest ones that have come out publicly. Just like, by the way, an important question I have from DevZ793, I've been testing some of the ancient cities on Bedrock, and for some reason, normal monsters are spawning in the deep dark. For what I know, this isn't meant to be happening, right? And the answer is no, this shouldn't be happening, DevZ793. There is a very strange bug happening in Minecraft Bedrock where deep dark, and especially ancient cities, like you saw in yesterday's video, will spawn in all sorts of hostile mobs, which makes them so much harder in an unnecessary way. The deep dark is meant to be devoid of all mobs besides the Warden, which is meant to make them a really useful area if you can get rid of those skulk shriekers, but right now it's just all the downside of potentially having the Warden, with basically none of the upside besides the chests in the cities. And personally, I'm really frustrated by this bug because it's one of the biggest points of the deep dark is that there aren't meant to be other mobs there, and it's not even like, oh yeah, this is just a bug that appeared last minute. This is a bug that has been found as of March the 31st. This bug has been in the game for over 2 months now, from 1.19.10.21 preview all the way down to 1.18.30. Seriously, basically every version of the game they've released in the last 2 months has had this huge bug inside of it, and they haven't gotten it fixed yet. And maybe there's something really complex happening there underneath the deep dark, but this is something that I would love to see fixed, and I'm hoping, again, if there is any bug they fix in 1.19.1, I hope this is one of them. Obviously, there's a lot more bugs on their radar. There's all sorts of weird bugs, like, did you know the big drip leaf right now doesn't make a noise that's detectable by the skulk sensor? So they're going to be fixing that in 1.19.10. They're going to make it so you can only mine a mob spawner with a pickaxe if you want to get experience. There's all sorts of weird things that you wouldn't really think of too much, but they're fixing them. It's going to be a much needed bug fix update, and it's hopefully coming out not too long from now. Speaking of not too long from now, Haydonia asks, is the game significantly harder or not? This is an interesting question about 1.19 because for most updates, you can say there are ways that the game has gone harder and there are ways the game has gone easier. The thing with the Warden though is although it has made the game significantly harder for the average player who doesn't know what they're doing, if you're just trying to beat the game or specifically go for an objective, you're not really going to run across the Warden. In fact, even most average players, if you don't know the ancient cities there, it's going to be a really, really rare find. And so when you take a look at most of the other features, they're mostly there for aesthetic and fun cosmetic reasons, right? The goat horn is a fun noise that you blow into, but it's not like a game-changing thing. The froglights to the mangrove blocks to the mud bricks, they're all just going to be new block types that are great for visuals, but aren't changing too much else. And so is the game significantly harder? I'd say this is the first update we've had in a while that doesn't actually change the difficulty in any way, besides maybe you could argue a tiny tad harder, because now when you're caving underground you might find a deep dark, but yeah, I'd say that it's not enough to affect speedrunning at the very least, which is always positive news. Anyway, speaking of positive news, why can't I find fireflies in the swamps? I've been looking for them all through the night, but I can't seem to find any. So this is a common complaint I've been hearing about 1.19, people having issues finding the fireflies. Allow me to help you out because it is quite a little known technique. There's a lot of steps. So step 1 is you need to find yourself one of these yellow flowers, and then step 2 is to find yourself a squid and make sure you kill it. Once you've gotten both of these things done, you want to shear a sheep. This requires using 2 iron, of course, and then once you've done that, you can dye each of the walls, place them down in your swamp, and boom, you've made a higher resolution, more interesting, and more useful version version of the Firefly that we saw from Minecon Live. For real, we never really saw anything that was going on with them, and I think it's interesting how many people, though, don't hear about these changes and are actually looking for old features. I'm going to assume this was a genuine comment, because whenever an update comes out, a lot of people do come back to the channel because they're just looking for a brief idea as to what's going on, and I love this one from your mother, not my mother, your mother. They say, "What? Froglights? Those are beautiful!" And honestly, the froglights are such a beautiful block. I really do like them, but the thing that I think is underappreciated about the froglights is they've finally done it. Mojang have made a brand new ambient mob, the frog, and they've given it enough use, both for the casual player who just wants to have cute little white frogs, green frogs, tadpoles, everything else, but then they've also made it so that if you are a builder or you want to have some unique blocks, you're going to get some real value out of the frog, because if you take him to the nether, which as we all know is how you treat your frog correctly in real life, make sure you don't feed them any bugs that you find on the road without googling it first, but always take them to a hellish dimension where there's no water. Frogs love it over there, and then once you do that, the frog will eat some magma slimes, and what you'll get are these beautiful frog lights. And the beautiful thing you might not know is the color of the frog light depends on the color of your frog, so there's actually a reason to have these fun frogs that come from all the different biomes, and I just love the way of tying in a basic mechanic which anyone can understand into something much more complex. I personally think it's too complex for me to like be excited about doing, but I'm gonna have to do it anyway, and I guess I'll start to enjoy it, or maybe I'll despise it. Honestly, I think what I'm gonna do with my Let's Play on Monday is I'm gonna find every single one of these features in my existing Let's Play world, just so we can properly play around with them in a real survival environment like you all know and love. Speaking of things you know and love, Iceman999 says, "Why is your audio quality still so bad?" And this is something that's so annoying, because whenever I travel, I have a microphone, and I can work out settings that make it sound really good. People say, "Wow, I can't even tell you're traveling," and then after a few days of using it with the exact same settings, it starts to sound like I'm talking through a tin can, or I'm in the bathroom, or I'm yelling at you from a different room, and I have no idea why it suddenly changes. My audio goes from being, "This is actually pretty good," to, "Oh my god, why are you recording with a built-in laptop mic? It almost sounds like..." And I have no idea why my audio quality goes up and down so much. I'm sorry for the last week's audio quality. It is an issue. I'm always trying to troubleshoot and do better, and I intend to do better for the future. Thank you for putting up with it. Speaking of things that you put up with, Nico Mean asks, "Wait, will Java be playable on consoles?" This, of course, responding to Bedrock and Java officially merging on the PC to become Java and Bedrock. The announcement happened. It is officially available. This came up on my Minecraft launcher on June the 8th. Create, explore, survive, repeat. Get Java Edition and Bedrock Edition as a package deal for Windows. And that is the key part I think we should emphasize for anyone who's wondering, like, can I play Java on console? Can I play, will I get a free copy of Java if I already own Pocket Edition? The answer is, if you are a PC player, and even more specifically, Windows 10 or Windows 11. Windows 8 or Mac or Linux are all only able to play Java, and all the other platforms that exist that aren't PCs can only play Bedrock, but Windows 10 and Windows 11 had both options available. Now they get them both bundled together. Funnily enough, even if you are on one of those other PC platforms, you'll still see Minecraft for Windows as one of your options. You just won't be able to play it unless you're on Windows 10 or 11, which is a bit of a funny move if you ask me. But anyway, the answer to will Java be playable on consoles is no. The answer to will you get a free copy of Java if you own Bedrock on some platform? No. If you own Bedrock or Java on PC, now you own the other one. And if, like me, you already own both versions for Windows, then what you can do now is you can look at the slightly better art for Java and Bedrock Edition. I hope that explains everything. Speaking of explanations, where does the Warden use the bathroom? And this is the real reason you should be scared of deep dark biomes, because he spends most of his time underneath that skulk, and if you look at the color of the skulk blocks, I think it immediately becomes clear to both of us exactly where the Warden uses the bathroom. It's not a very pleasant thing, but speaking of not very pleasant things, Whihorn the Giant says, "When are you going to stream?" Which, as we all know, worst form of internet content. What if you could watch a 10-minute YouTube video but over the space of 90 minutes? Who wants that? Maybe you do. And if you want to know when I'm streaming, for the next 3 weeks I'm back in the UK, and so I'm going to be streaming 2 to 5 times a week. The exact number and the exact days will depend on what's going on. I mentioned this before, but I've got my first funeral in my entire life coming up, so I don't know if I should stream at the funeral. I mean, what's the point? I'm not going to be able to find a lobster roll in the church, so there's no point of raising funds for that. So yeah, more seriously, I'm going to be streaming a lot more in the next 3 weeks. If you want to catch Toycat streams, this is your golden 3-week period until the end of June, when I'm going back to the United States for a little bit. I'm actually back mostly, you know, besides for that funeral, to make sure that I can get some videos and to make sure I have a consistent microphone. Is traveling country to have a decent setup that you can trust and rely on a bit crazy? Well, yeah, but you know what else is crazy? Vimo Vishaft, who says, why the hell would you move to the US? Do you not know the US is not very good country? I don't know why I did that in such a silly Northern European accent, when clearly this is an American, right? A lot of people from America have comments like this when I mention that I'm spending a lot of time there, and I'm looking into the visa process, or maybe even, you know, like temporarily owning a vehicle over there. So, like, you know, making big life moves. Why would people willingly go to the United States? I mean, don't you know it's the worst country in the world? There's this fraction of every country, and it's very visible on the internet, because I think the internet, and social media in particular, is very heavily filled with dissatisfied people. You are more likely to be on social media when you're unsatisfied in your life, and if you're unsatisfied with your country, you're more likely to talk about it. I don't need to tell you about how much I love fish and chips and mushy peas and pubs and rain, because you know what? We all know why the UK is so great. But like people who really hate something, the way that XYZ is run or the government are way more likely to talk about it than people who go, yeah, I think it's perfectly okay. I think it's got its ups and its downs. But to avoid sidestepping the question, why would you move to the US? Not everyone dislikes it. I think it's probably one of the better places to live on Earth. I think, in fact, if you are lucky enough to grow up in the US or a Western or relatively wealthy European country, you've got one of the best spawn locations you can possibly have. And a lot of people do dislike, and I think there are some real issues with the United States. Like, I think in general, people get less time off. I think, you know, in general, food can be less healthy. I think that there are all sorts of downsides that, like, yeah, probably do suck if you live there and you just want to live a really nice, normal life, etc. But if you like extreme everything, because, you know, if you only get 2 weeks off a year, you want to make sure those 2 weeks are crazy. And so Las Vegas is one of the most entertaining cities in the world. You might think of it as being the gambling thing, but I love that at every single aspect of life, whether it's like food, do you want cheap food? Do you want Michelin star food? They have it, and it's great. Do you want hiking? Do you want crazy, weird sights and attractions? I went to the strangest supermarket. It's not really a supermarket. If you know Omega Mart, I had so much fun in there. And so why would I go to the US? I really enjoy it. I find Las Vegas in particular is such an entertaining city. I think there are some great points about how workers' rights and blah, 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 blah all happen. But I'm in a very privileged position that I'm not choosing where I live based on some weird arbitrary laws that ultimately only matter as much as people believe in them, and that I'm picking where I want to live based on where I enjoy myself, where I feel welcome, and all sorts of things like that. But you know, this is enough to rant about the US for now. If you're curious about when my next live stream is, it's going to be tomorrow on Sunday, assuming this is Q&A Saturday. We sometimes get them out a little bit late, and so they become Q&A Sundays. But tomorrow I'm going to be streaming, and that's also presumably when the new merch is going to drop. People have been asking for so long, and one of the things that's important to me is making high quality things, making, you know, the number of things that are all going to be actually good. And I also feel like it has to tie into the brand. And so that is why we have made the "We Will All Die Someday" mugs. This is a real picture. That is why we made these. And that's also why I decided to pursue my business venture of making Valentine's Day cards that aren't very good Valentine's Day cards, especially because they're being sold in June. Except they're not being sold. There is a free Valentine's Day card that will come with your order if you spend over a certain threshold. All of the details and where you can get this stuff is launching tomorrow. But for now, I hope that you'll enjoy this video, and I hope you're as excited for this as I am. It's been months to set up and make sure that it's to the standard that I'd like, but I hope that you're going to enjoy it, just like I hope you enjoy your weekend, because I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.